Hello, Athens! Today, we're continuing coverage of the May 21st local election, focusing on the sheriff's race. Sheriff John Q. Williams is running against Tommy Dorsey in the Democratic primary this year. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to connect with Dorsey for an interview. His campaign email bounced and I didn't know how to get in touch with him. But I did sit down with John Q. and we had a pretty good discussion. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much for being here with me, John.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Glad to be here.
So it's been 4 years since you were first elected on a huge wave of support. You won with 70% of the vote last time, and you've accomplished quite a bit in your first term. So how do you like being sheriff? And what are you most proud of having accomplished so far?
It's great being sheriff, and I say that not just because of the title, but I sought to become sheriff so I could help the community, not the other way around. I've always just kind of had it hard for trying to help people and trying to be amongst the people, whether it was as an officer or a dispatcher. And now being sheriff, I've been able to realize a lot of those things, just being able to create our community outreach and just kind of increase the sheriff's office presence in the community, whether it's doing our food drives, doing things for the kids, sponsoring basketball programs. We're trying to have our hands in a lot of things. And it's also afforded me the opportunity to be on some boards. So I sit on the board for juvenile offender advocates, the Boys and Girls Club, and a little group called Georgia Conflict Center. All those things, they're very different, but it's fun seeing how they kind of marry together. So I think just getting that exposure and letting people see what the Clarke County Sheriff's Office is about and what we really can be about.
Okay, yeah, and you've done a lot of things, like you have a program with Habitat for Humanity, sort of making tiny houses. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So that came about, we were talking about a lot of things. You know, you can't live in Athens and not know that we have a problem with unhoused people and affordable housing. And we were kind of talking with Spencer Fry and Habitat Humanity saying, hey, you know, what if the jail could do something? And we came up with the idea probably middle to end of last year that we could start a program that would teach people skills to actually do some carpentry and construction. And it kind of evolved to say, hey, well, we can not only teach them, but we'd actually do it at the jail. And they said, well, what if we just had them build some modules and tiny houses? And it just kind of grew from there. And the program has been going for a few weeks. We're almost done with our first house. It's looking great. We've got, I think, 8 ladies right now who've been working on that project. So they work every other Saturday, and each Monday they usually have a classroom portion. But it's taught by somebody who was actually a licensed contractor. So they'll be able to leave with some certification, and they'll be able to get, hopefully, a job in that area whenever they're released.
That's awesome. And what are you going to do with the house once you're finished with it?
So we're working on that. You know, there's a lot of zoning issues in Athens, and we got to work through some of that. But we got a lot of ideas. Is it something that we could do? We can find property and put houses there for affordable housing. Would it be something for, you know, the unhoused population? Could it be something that we could have close to the jail? Somebody gets out, they don't have a place to go and get a fresh start there without getting back in the same environment they were in. So we got a lot of ideas. We just got to hone in, but we didn't want to delay starting the program just by, you know, trying to finalize, because a lot of things end up not happening when you wait till everything is perfect.
True. So in 2020, you ran on a platform of transparency, criminal justice reform, and reforming the sheriff's office overall, because it was in pretty bad shape when you took office. There were major problems with deputy morale and recruitment. The former sheriff had some pretty harsh policies around sick leave and mandatory overtime. New deputies felt that they didn't have enough training and that the higher-ups were playing favorites. So often they didn't stay in those jobs long.
Right.
And I know after COVID, it got really difficult for everyone to hire, just like, you know, across the board, across industries. But have you been able to make any progress in these areas like recruitment and retention?
So specifically just with the morale, I think it's up because we've been able to show people that they have a voice. That's really important to, you know, employee staff. We really try to have more of a family environment. I know people say that all the time, but I want them to know that I care about them personally. So, you know, whether it's somebody that's sick or a family member is sick, we make sure we reach out to them and make sure they know that we're thinking about them. And we don't hammer people for having sicknesses and illnesses. Unfortunately, and you can tell by the jail population, this is probably the sickest we as Americans have been maybe ever. And we can't really fault our people for having the same afflictions that society has, because we are humans and we all live together. As far as recruiting, I think we've made a lot of strides, but it's not necessarily because the county has helped us a lot. There's still a significant gap between our pay and the police department's pay. They're about almost $8,000 starting pay higher than us. My frustration is that they say that we don't do the same job, but we have the same certification, we have the same required training, and we can do anything that the police department can do. That argument doesn't stand up, because there's investigators with the DA's office, there's investigators with the solicitor's office. They're paid on the same scale as PD. And I would never say that somebody should not make what they make, but I'm saying, why aren't we in that same pot? We're professional law enforcement and we're certified. So I think we should be there. So it doesn't help us, and we lose people to the police department, to UGA, and to other counties. How we've kind of countered that is, there were some jobs we had, like working the front desk at the jail, some other areas of the jail that didn't necessarily have to be staffed by a deputy. So we've allowed some of our civilians to come in, and especially if it's like overtime, they really like that. They can make a little extra money, learn something else, and not have the same monotony. So if a records clerk can go work the front lobby or something, that builds morale a good bit, because they do get to get out of their normal environment and they get to see a lot of other different sides of what the sheriff's office can be. So that's helped as far as keeping people. It's just not really helped us with sworn certified people. We probably still need another 40 deputies in order to get where we need to be. If we had another 15 or 20, we'd be good. But right now, especially with some of these potential laws coming in effect, it's going to be tough if we start getting higher numbers in the jail to be able to manage it.
Yeah, I've definitely seen you down there at City Hall advocating for higher pay for your deputies, and I would imagine that they appreciate that. But what laws are you talking about?
So in particular, there's some things with immigration that are coming up. The one I'm most concerned about is Bill 1105. The one prior to that would make it a misdemeanor for us not to, as people have said, cooperate with ICE, which has never been the case. Just a matter of, there's some things that we don't do. My belief truly is that law enforcement, local law enforcement, is not for federal enforcement. Local law enforcement should be about protecting and serving. And it doesn't matter where you're from, what you look like. Any person that's in this county, we're responsible for their safety. And whether you're a victim, whether you're a suspect, whatever, we're going to treat you with dignity and respect as long as you let us. And we just want to advocate for that. But if we go to the point that, basically not doing ICE's job for them is a criminal offense for the sheriffs and the sheriff's office, that's going to create some big problems. And it's going to lead to, more overcrowding in the jails. And we're already not staffed enough to do that. And we've never had, the staffing to really just house that many people. The jail could hold over 800 people, but right now, when we hit about 450, we're kind of busting at the seams.
I do want to talk about ICE a little later, but first I want to ask you, what are your top priorities for the next term?
So my top priority is working on getting equitable pay for my deputies. That's the most important thing. And when you take over a position, you have changes that you have to make, but you don't want to change everything at once. So we got some major things changed, but I think that's the most significant thing. We've made some progress, but not enough. So we really need to get that pay up. We also need to get, more vehicles, because more staff, you need more vehicles anyway, but also just with the supply and demand of vehicles, it's hard. And, we've got some cars that have been ordered, but it's 2-3 years before we actually get them. So if we could have larger stock of vehicles, then those wouldn't end up with as high mileage. So if you got, a SUV with over 100,000 miles and we have to go pick somebody up in California and that's our best car, what are the odds that it might break down while it's there? And the cost of that goes up, because the cost of paying third companies to bring people to us. So if somebody's wanted and they're found in California for, say, it's going to cost us at least $6,000 out of pocket to get that person transported by somebody else. It goes down a lot if we can have somebody drive. We had our guys had to drive to Missouri to get somebody, and instead of spending almost $9,000, we spent probably about $3,000 in order to have two of them drive up. So it's their salary, the mileage and gas, bring them back. It's a lot more cost efficient because I want to be a good steward of the taxpayers' money.
Okay, yeah, definitely some cost savings there if you can get those vehicles. So a small number of Athens residents made a lot of noise recently about undocumented immigration. They criticized you, among lots of other people, for not honoring federal immigration detainers, saying that undocumented immigrants make our community less safe, and they want all these people deported. And for the audience, ICE stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and they issue a detainer when they need a bit of extra time to take someone into their custody. So they ask local jails to detain suspected immigrants after they otherwise would have been released for up to 48 hours. And honoring these detainer requests is entirely voluntary for sheriffs, at least up until now.
Yeah, up until now.
And you're not responsible for enforcing federal immigration laws.
Right.
So can you clarify what your policy is around ICE detainers and why you chose it?
Okay, and this policy actually went into effect with the last sheriff in 2018. I took office at January 1, 2021. And it's basically that we would not detain people solely on a detainer. If somebody commits a crime and it's something they would normally be out in 48 hours, or a judge gives them bond, says to get out, a judge's order is an official order. A detainer is not. So if that judge orders that person to be released, on one, reading the law myself, and two, advice of legal counsel, that pretty much constitutes a warrantless arrest at that point. If it was a police officer, they would have to go get a warrant in order for us to do that. So I think it's the same thing when it comes to ICE. They also have different laws that they can enforce federally. As far as somebody entering the country illegal, they can charge that. They can charge somebody who's been deported and come back with a crime. Those are at the federal level. That's not something that we can do. So if they really, really want somebody, they can get them. And the fact is, ICE does not deport everybody that commits a crime. Odds are, for some misdemeanor or shoplifting, nobody's on their radar already, they're going to say, okay, we don't, because they don't have the staffing either. So I'm not blaming them. They have staffing issues too. So sometimes they just can't come get somebody. And, you know, in the past, there were times where somebody might be in jail days or weeks. And, you know, if it falls through the cracks, you look up and a year later, you got somebody said, wait a minute, wasn't I supposed to come get them? And now you got to track back down how long they've been there. So we have taken an approach. We want to make sure we track those situations because it wasn't true that nobody was ever deported. We just didn't have good record keeping. That's one of the things that we've changed. We've made sure we got better records of things so we can track things like that going forward. Because even when we asked ICE to tell us, hey, so how many people have we deported? That was 2-3 weeks ago, and we still haven't got back a number from them. So just the records are off. So now we've got spreadsheets and we got something digital that we do. So if that question ever comes up again, from now on, we can readily have that information available.
Yeah, some of the people who have been criticizing you, they care a lot about the U.S. Constitution, and so I hope they would understand that you can't just be violating someone's constitutional rights.
It's almost like kidnapping. But the funny thing is, and I don't have a form with me, but the form that ICE sends, the actual detainer, after it requests, it has the person's name, all these. We request that you do it. It spells out, hey, this is a request. It does not authorize you to detain a person longer than they normally would be held. So it's on their form. It says that we don't have to do that.
And I have one more quick question on this topic. So ICE allows local police and sheriffs to become partners in immigration enforcement through the 287G program. And this program has been criticized by some people for being overly costly to participate in, for targeting people with no criminal history, and some say it harms the relationship between police and their communities, which, of course, as you know, can be detrimental to law enforcement. Does your office participate in the 287G program?
We do not, and I don't know if we ever have. There are some surrounding counties that do, and just from talking to people I know, they don't really like it because when you're in local law enforcement in particular, you need to have those relationships with the community. You need to have the trust that people will come to you and talk to you. And if everybody's worried that they're going to get deported or their neighbor is, or, somebody's going to lose a family member, a lot of the times that's their primary focus. Because if you don't have a way to survive without this person, it's just like a domestic violence situation. I did a lot of those. And a lot of times the person, whether male, female, or child, recants the story because, oh, wait a minute, I don't want that person to get in trouble because, oh man, now I got to eat. I got to find a way to do this. And it's the same thing. I've already heard from some of our Latino community, not even necessarily undocumented, that they're afraid, that they, don't go out as much since this last incident, that they, are afraid for their families, that, we had an Explorers program that we're going, and we had a lot of folks in there, and they called us right after that horrible murder, and they were like, hey, are y'all going to cancel Explorers? Because, I don't know if we should come. And we're like, no, come. We're still going to do it. We're going to protect you. It's going to be all right. We're not just looking to ship people off. We're looking to make the community better.
And you do have an opponent in the Democratic primary this year. Why should voters choose you?
So I think you look at my track record. I've done a lot of things in this community, and I've kind of brought the sheriff's office to where it is definitely respected and more involved in the community. And I think that speaks a lot. And it also speaks that, I've kept my promises, even in the face of adversity. Like you said, the people were, I was called everything but a child of God by email and phones, racist, whatever things that you can think of, people were calling and saying to me. But I stood by my guns, and the policy is the policy. It's that way for a reason. And that's one of the things, in 2020 when I was campaigning, the reason you find those sound bites is because every time I was interviewed, that was the first question that people asked me. It wasn't that was necessarily the first thing on my mind, but that's what this community showed me. That's what they wanted to know about. So we started there, and then we moved on to the other things. So I think that is it. But also, you don't want to start over from scratch. We started making a lot of progress, and we got a ways to go. It's not perfect. But as I said earlier, you have to kind of build. You can't change. If you change everything at once, you're going to have a total rebellion. So we're slowly getting to where we need to be. I think we've got a relationship with the community. We're working on getting staffing up and definitely morale being up and just making some changes internally so we can make sure that everything goes a lot more smoothly. And just working with the mayor and the commission and the manager, which is something that is not always the case in sheriff's offices throughout the state. A lot of times there's this button heads between the commission and the sheriffs. And it's like, hey, y'all just control the budget. Well, y'all give the budget. Y'all don't control it. But the sheriff has this. So trying to keep out of those power struggles has been a mission of mine. And I think we're in a good place. And I hope we can be that going forward. And you don't want to have to start over yet again. If I can get this next 4 years and it gets to where we need to be, I think everybody will be pleased. But really, if I can't make more progress and it's not working, I'll admit defeat. I'll take care of myself. If it's just not going to work, I'll admit it.
Hopefully we won't have a global pandemic.
Right. That definitely affected a lot of things. But so that's another thing that we got. We actually were able to bring people in to do vaccinations inside the jail. And that was one of the ways that we were able to keep the jail residents safe, because we had that program. And a lot of them did opt in, but also, even our staff. But we probably had more staff that got COVID than we ever did any jail residents, just because of the practice. We kept people, sequestered until they were proven to be negative, and then we put them in general population. We also worked, Spencer Fry helped us out with that as well. He had this cleaning solution that he used at his thrift store, and we started using that. So he supplied us with that, and we were able to sanitize the jail a lot. That definitely opened my eyes, the side of sheriffing that you don't know about. We use that word sheriffing. It's not an official term, but I think we use it enough that it should be in a dictionary. But that's one of the things that you just never knew that as a sheriff that you were going to have to think about. Hey, how do we keep people from getting communicable diseases? Usually a cold or something like that, you wash your hands. But COVID was a whole entire different thing. And then the end of last year with RSV and all the other things that were floating around. Anytime you can keep those numbers low, 0 is ideal. But if at least you only have like 1 or 2 here and there, I think you're doing a pretty good job.
Well, it was great talking with you today. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. Next up, we've got Carol Myers in the District 8 Commission race. Look for that one coming soon. I'll see you then.